In the shadow of the moors, nestled between twisted trees and the ghostly remains of ancient ruins, lay the small village of Wycliffe. Its thatched roofs were drenched in the gloom of a perpetual fog that seemed to roll in from the moors like a silent specter. By day, the villagers toiled in the fields, their lives simple yet arduous, but when the sun dipped below the horizon, an unsettling stillness blanketed the hamlet. The graveyard, a patch of earth filled with crumbling stones and earth-stained crosses, was the heart of the village's darker side. It was here that Barnaby, the village gravedigger, spent his days and many of his nights. With a spade worn by years of use and hands calloused from toil, Barnaby had grown accustomed to the inevitability of death, witnessing the passing of friends, neighbors, and the occasional stranger. He understood the land's silence, but of late, he sensed something more, an unsettling presence that lingered among the graves. It began one fateful evening when Barnaby was called upon to prepare a new resting place. The villagers spoke of an illness sweeping through the hamlet, claiming the lives of the frail and elderly. As the sun sank, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, he trudged to the graveyard, his heart heavy with the weight of sorrow and dread. As Barnaby worked, he became aware of another figure laboring among the graves. This person moved with a peculiar grace, their actions fluid yet almost spectral. The light of the crescent moon illuminated the stranger's silhouette, and Barnaby squinted, trying to discern their features. But the figure seemed to blend into the night, shadowed and silent. Each evening that followed, Barnaby returned to the graveyard, and each night the silent worker was there. This eerie ritual gnawed at his mind. Was he losing his wits? Had the weight of sorrow driven him mad? But deep down he knew that he must confront this strange being. One fateful night, as the moon hung low and the fog thickened like a shroud, Barnaby approached the figure, his heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and determination. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice barely piercing the oppressive silence. The figure turned, and Barnaby was taken aback. The face was pallid and gaunt, as if the very essence of life had drained away. Hollow eyes regarded him with an unsettling calmness. "I am but a keeper of the forgotten," the figure replied, their voice a soft whisper that seemed to drift on the wind. "Why do you toil here at night?" Barnaby demanded, trying to mask his fear with bravado. "You dig among the dead, yet the villagers know nothing of you." "I labor for those who have no rest," the stranger said, their words flowing like a dark stream. "For the souls who linger in torment, unclaimed by the earth or sky. I give them what they seek, a final place, a final peace." Barnaby's mind raced. He had heard the whispers of restless spirits, tales passed down through generations of those who died without a proper burial or those wronged in life condemned to roam the earth. Are you a ghost?" he stammered, the cold grip of fear tightening around his throat. The figure chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down Barnaby's spine. "Not a ghost, but a servant of death. I collect the lost and guide them home." Barnaby stepped back, his heart racing. "But why must you do this? Why at night, in silence?" The figure regarded him with a sorrowful gaze. "In life, the living do not wish to see the dead. They fear what they do not understand. I come when the moon rises, when the world is quiet, to tend to those forgotten by the living." In that moment, the truth struck Barnaby like a thunderclap. He had seen the graves left untouched, the forgotten names carved into stone, faded and neglected. "You mean to say you've been helping them?" he whispered, horrified and fascinated. "Yes," the figure replied, their voice resonating with a sorrowful finality. "I cannot rest until they do. And I fear that you, too, will find your path intertwined with mine." "What do you mean?" Barnaby asked, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. "Tonight there is one who needs you, one who cries for recognition, for closure. Will you assist me?" Despite the growing dread clawing at his insides, curiosity overpowered Barnaby's fear. "What must I do?" "Come," the figure beckoned, leading him deeper into the graveyard. Away from the familiar graves, and toward a neglected corner where the earth seemed to shift uneasily beneath the moonlight. Barnaby's heart raced as he followed, a strange mix of dread and anticipation coursing through him. They reached a small, unmarked grave, the earth barely disturbed. "Here lies one who was cast aside, a soul wronged by the living." "Dig and uncover their story," the figure urged, their voice low and compelling. With trembling hands, Barnaby began to dig. The earth was soft, yielding to his spade, and with each scoop he felt an electric energy fill the air around him. He unearthed the remains of a small, rotting coffin, its wood decayed but still intact. A chill raced through him as he pried it open. Inside lay the skeletal remains of a child, the bones frail and small. Clutched in the bony fingers was a tattered piece of cloth, stained and worn. As he touched it, a rush of memories flooded Barnaby's mind, images of a family lost, of a mother weeping for her child, of laughter turned to silence. "Do you see?" the figure whispered, their presence almost a comfort now. "This child was forgotten, lost in time. But now you can give them peace." Overwhelmed, Barnaby nodded, understanding what was required of him. He gently reburied the child, reciting a few heartfelt words that echoed in the stillness. He could feel the air shift, the weight of sorrow lifting, and he knew that the child's spirit would finally be at rest. The figure watched silently, a faint smile flickering across their pallid face. "You have done well," they said. "But remember, the dead will always call to the living, and as long as you work in this graveyard, you shall know their stories." With that, the figure began to fade, dissolving into the night like mist. Barnaby stood alone, his heart racing, but he felt an undeniable connection to the souls he had once only buried. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Barnaby understood the path before him. He would no longer simply dig graves, he would listen to the stories of the dead, granting them the recognition they deserved. The graveyard was not just a resting place, it was a sanctuary of lost tales and memories. And with that knowledge, he would honor the unquiet souls who roamed the earth, whispering their stories into the dawn. From that day forth, Barnaby worked with a renewed purpose. Each shovel of earth turned into a promise to remember the forgotten and to give voice to those who had none. The village would soon know of the man who spoke to the dead, and perhaps, just perhaps, he would teach them that death was not the end, but merely another chapter in the endless story of life.